Hey everybody, here I am. My name is Jillian. I am here to do a vlog or to do vlogs maybe about things that I really like. So a few things about me. Number one, I'm a child of God. I'm a Christian and Jesus is my Lord and Savior and I'm very grateful that he's in my life. Number two, I am a massive nerd. As you can see, I'm literally wearing my PlayStation shirt, and over top of that, I'm actually wearing my Galaxy's Edge Black Spire Star Wars hoodie. Massive nerd. Everything about me is nerdy. I love reading. I love writing. I'm actually a published author as of last year, which is very exciting, and I will talk a little bit about that eventually. And I just wanted a space to be able to talk about things that I like. I don't have a lot of people to talk to about my nerdisms, so I just kind of wanted to have a space for that. So between talking about books or video games, things like that, probably those two things specifically. Um, I guess I just wanted the space for that. So that's what I'm doing today, talking about books specifically. So I wanted to start off my first vlog, starting off with The False Prince by Jennifer A. Nielsen, or really the Ascendance series. I'll talk about all of them, which means there will probably definitely be spoilers about this book series. So if you don't want to be spoiled, then my vlogs are probably not the place to be. I'll try to be nice, but I don't know. But anyway, the reason why I picked up this book at the library, because I really hadn't been much of a reader for a long time. I kind of fell out of it after being a teenager. You know, reading became work in college and whatnot. So I kind of fell out of it. But last year I started watching a lot of book vloggers and I was like, hey, I should read again. I can go to the library, pick up some books. And this was one of the books I picked up. And I loved the premise of it because it reminded me so much of this book, The Thief by Megan Whalen Turner, who this book I've owned for a very long time. It is a little bit beat up and a little bit loved, but this is one of my favorite books. And it's a whole series as well, but I've actually only ever read this book, and I've read this book multiple times. I love this book. I do want to read the other books in the series as well, but this one is just so good. So let me tell you about the premise of this one and why it made me think of the premise of The False Prince, briefly. So this book follows Eugenides, and he is the aforementioned thief, right? And he's in jail when this starts out, and he gets taken out of jail by a very important man. I think he's called the Magus, if I remember. It's been a while since I've read this book, but I'm pretty sure that's what he's called. And they end up going on a journey because they need him to steal something very important, and he's the only one that can, because he made an attempt to steal the king's seal, which is why he ended up where he was. And so it's this journey of him going on this adventure to steal this very important thing, right? And throughout it, Jen is a little bit of a mystery. We don't really know what's going on, but you kind of get inklings that he's more not like this just lowly thief. He's like far more than what he kind of claims to be. But Jen is always very like, no, man, I just got a big mouth, you know. He just kind of brushes everybody off, and you're just kind of like, you know. And then spoilers here, so don't, whatever. But we end up eventually finding out that he is the queen's thief from, I believe, the queen from Atolia. If I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but one of the other kingdoms. So he actually set up this whole thing to end up being in the jail, to get caught, to go on this journey, to steal this special item, and then end up back home where he then gives it to his queen. So it was like this huge long setup, and it's just, I love it when stories do that, when the main character kind of plays off like he's not that intelligent, but then it turns out that he had this huge plan in mind. I mean, if as you can see back here, I have some Artemis Fowl books from my childhood. Oops, this way, sorry. There, this way, there. And Artemis Fowl is very much like that too, where he plans these big heists, and you're kind of just like, your mind is kind of blown by the big heists that they plan. And I just really love those intelligent characters. Jen is one of my favorite characters because of that. So, coming back to The False Prince, the premise sounded very much like that. So, basically, there was these orphans. I think there's four of them that start out, but there's only three of them after a while. Anyway, but Sage is one of the orphans, and essentially very important man grabs these orphans and decides that he there's a missing prince, okay, a prince that has gone missing, kind of presumed dead at this point, but because he's missing, no one can really presume him dead. So they end up, this guy, this important man, is like, hey, I'm going to get myself a puppet prince. We're going to find one orphan. Nobody's going to miss him, right? And we're going to teach him how to be a prince. We're going to make him look like the prince, and we're going to put him on the throne. So he gets these three orphans, and he uses them to kind of pit them against each other to try to see who could become the best. And Sage ends up being the best. He looks the closest to the prince. He can act like the prince. He has all of these little mannerisms and things like that. Now, spoiler, okay? So stop if you don't want to know anything else. Although it might be obvious at this point, but spoiler. It turns out that the missing prince all along was in the orphanage, and that Sage is Jaron, the missing prince. And so then he ends up taking the throne. And although I don't think that he planned the whole thing out like Jen did, he still kind of made a plan to get to the throne. And plus the whole, kind of idea of like, oh, I'm a nobody, but oh, actually, I'm somebody. That whole twist was just like, mwah, 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 so good. It was so good. And I really enjoyed it. Even when I kind of saw it coming, I was still having a good time because I love the character of Sage or Jaron, and it was so worth the read. It's such a you want to keep turning the page. I mean, it's only like 300 some odd pages, but you want to keep reading. Like, you don't want to stop. It is so good, and all the other characters are fun. The other orphans, Rodin and Tobias, great characters, and they continually show back up the other as the story goes on, and it's just a very victorious ending, and you're just like, raise the roof. You know what I mean? It's just good. Okay. I had a great time. So then, of course, I had to get all the rest of them. You know what I mean? So the runaway prince, or runaway king, sorry, he becomes king because his family's all dead. Tragedy. But the Runaway King is the next one, and this one is really fun because there's pirates involved. Okay, we got pirates. I have to remember the name of his love interest. Oh my goodness, because she's slipping my mind, but she's quite important in this. Oh man, come on. I wonder where her name is. It's got to be somewhere. But anyway, so uh, maybe her name will just come to me. It's not likely, but maybe her name will come to me. But this one is big because although he meets his love interest in this book, this kind of establishes them, I think, a little bit more, which is really fun. But again, there's pirates involved in this one, which is really fun. Rodin becomes his enemy in this one. The Rodin, who was an orphan that was almost used to be the prince, he becomes his enemy in this one. Oh, let me tell you, the drama is good, and it was really fun. And the thing that is really enjoyable about these is that Sage does have that kind of Artemis Fowl or Jen kind of way of, he makes these big plots and plans to try to get through and save everybody. And he doesn't want even his enemies, he wants to give them a second chance. And that's what I really like about his character, is even like Rodin, who literally like becomes his enemy, he wants to be his friend, and he wants to kind of get him back and all this. Anyway, I really love the way that Jaron does things. He's a really sweet character. He's definitely chaos. He's so chaotic, but he's also so smart, and it's really, really fun to watch that play out when he is contending with pirates. Okay? So fun. And then we have the Shadow Throne. Now, originally, it was only a trilogy. So this was the last book in the series. I wonder if I can find her name in this one. Let's find his. Oh, yeah. So, Avinia. Oops. Imogen. That's her name. Imogen is his love interest. Um, Avinia is so Jaron is the king of Carthia. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but that's how it looks to me. Jaron is the king of Carthia. Avinia is like the opposing kingdom, and Carthia is like this really lush and like central kingdom, and like the other kingdoms around it kind of want it, but they haven't really gone for it. But the king of Vivinia is going for it. It kind of starts in this book, that the war kind of starts here, but it really takes hold in the Shadow Throne. This is an intense book. This one had me on the edge of my seat pretty much the whole time. I don't know if it's my favorite one. I think the first one is my favorite. Like, I really want to reread the first one already, and I only just read it last year. Um, but this one is fun. It's, again, I love his plans. I love, because they're always really like, they don't really make sense when you see it, and you're just like, what are you doing, dude? What are you doing? But then when he does it, it's like, oh, ah! And you're just like on the edge of your seat, like, oh my gosh, that was crazy. So it's really fun. The Shadow Throne is really good, and it ends the trilogy out really well. I can see that she had kind of planned to stop there, but she didn't stop there. So this one's a great conclusion to the first couple books to kind of round out his ascension to the throne. He's king. Other people are trying to get his kingdom, but he ends up, wiping them out. Great. This is a great one. But then we have, she continued on. I don't think it was that long after the fact, but this is a period of time after this trilogy. I think it's only like maybe 6 months or something like that, or is it like a year? Anyway, something like that. Okay, I think it's a year. I think it's a year between. I was just taking a look to see. Again, I read these all last year, so it's been a little while. Um, but the Captive Kingdom is really good. It takes you like away from Carthia, away from the kingdom, and it introduces a brand new enemy because Avenia got defeated in the Shadow Throne. So it's kind of like, okay, well then what's the threat now? Well, there's a whole nother threat, kind of like pirates, kind of like Vikings, that kind of a vibe. I would say Vikings more. The new threat is like Vikings because they just kind of come and they take and they plunder and they destroy and then they leave and they go find somewhere else to do that again. So that's kind of what he is up against in here. I don't know. It would be nice if I remembered the name of this group of people, but it doesn't even have it on the back here. So, um, but the interesting thing about this one is it brings in his family again and kind of the mystery of like he knows what happened to his family. You find out in the original trilogy, you find out how they got killed and things like that, but there's something missing. And um you find out about his brother in this one. I'll say that. You find out what happened to his brother in this one, and you find out some tea with that, and it's really good. I won't give it all away or anything like that. I know I've already kind of spoiled some other stuff, but you kind of have to spoil it to tell the whole series. But anyway, interesting stuff with his brother in this one, and then the Vikings are crazy, and again, my boy Jaron, he comes through with the crazy plans, and in this one, I liked a lot that it seemed like some of his plans were just not going well. Um, and the one thing about that I like about Jaron too is he's very self-sacrificing as a leader. Like it's not necessarily, I guess, a good trait when you're like the king of a country. Um, because you're supposed to run the country, but he's very self-sacrificing for his friends. He loves his friends and his family above all, and he would sacrifice anything for them, which I really like in his character personally. But in this one, he definitely puts his neck on the line a lot, and but it's a great book. I think this is one of the thicker ones, though. It's definitely this is a big book, but so much fun to read. The Captive Kingdom was a great, diving back into that world. Really, really fun stuff. And then the last book currently in the series, and she says, the Jennifer Nielsen says she's not opposed to writing more, so I'm really hoping that we see more from her because I really like her writing style. Although she does have other book series which I've also read, and they're really fun. Oh, my cats! If you hear a cat meowing, I have cats. Um, but The Shattered Castle is a great one. It's kind of funny because when I was reading this one, I kind of got frustrated at the circumstances that kept happening. I was like, why does this keep happening to Jaron? Why does this keep happening to Carthia? Why? Like, this is terrible, right? Just when we thought we got rid of them, the Prosarians, that's their name. The Prosarians are the Vikings that I mentioned before. Just when you thought you got rid of them, guess what? They're back for one more, baby. They're back for one more. And they want revenge because they got beat up in the captive kingdom, okay? They want revenge. But they're not on sea anymore. They're coming on land now, and they're coming to Carthia. So now Jaron has to kind of face them in a really intense way. And my cat is like, I want to play with all the books. I want to eat them. Um, my cat, her name is Drew. She's crazy, but she's lovable. But she's a little grumpy right now. I don't know what's going on. But anyway, so the Prosarians come. They come for their final revenge, and this one really does end. Like, I think that the ending for this one is really solid. All of the things that I want to have happened. His love interest, right? We've talked about his love interest, Imogen. And throughout the series, she has always been at his side. There was in the Shadow Throne, there was a time when you weren't sure anything good was going to happen. Okay, I'm telling you, Shadow Throne had me on the edge of my seat. But then she's back in the captive kingdom. Although she's struggling, the main thing with her, and it comes in this one to play a lot because now my cat's playing with my computer. It comes into play with this one a lot because Imogen and Jaron are going to get married. Okay, and her mother is kind of like, are you sure he's good enough for you, because he keeps getting you in a whole lot of trouble, because trouble seems to follow Jaron everywhere he goes, you know what I mean? And her mom is not necessarily wrong. Okay, trouble does seem to follow him right now. However, I do love this book because Jaron comes clean about a lot of stuff. Because the thing about Jaron is he kind of hides a lot of stuff. He kind of bottles it up because he's like, my problems is not other people's problems. You know what I mean? And he has a lot of trauma because, as I mentioned in the first book, he was in an orphanage. Mind you, his parents were not dead at the time he was in the orphanage. You know what I'm saying? So what happened with that was that there was an attempt on his life, and his parents decided to knowingly hide him in an orphanage in Avenia, and but then they just kind of left him there. And though it was for his protection, he has a lot of abandonment issues. And again, I can relate a little bit, okay? So I have a lot of heart for Duran. Duran has a lot of trauma, let's just put it that way, understandably so. And a lot of that gets resolved in this book, which I really like. Well, not resolved, but it gets brought out into the open, if you will, which I love. And you kind of understand why Jaron wants to feel in control of his circumstances and why he makes these like elaborate plans to try to, you know, come at the enemy with these plans, because he's not really had any control over his life for pretty much his whole life. He's kind of been dumped and dumped on with people's problems and things like that his whole life. And so, his one way of contributing is that he's very intelligent and he can come up with these plans. And I just really like that about his character. Anyway, Jaron, one of my favorites, one of my top faves little guys for sure. But this story, a lot of the trauma comes out. He has really, real heart to hearts with Imogen. Some of their relationship is kind of up in the air for a little while, which is like, no, I don't have time for this. Can you guys just work it out? This is the fifth book. Like, let's go. And of course they do. And the thing about Imogen is, like, they're going to be fine because she's such a stable character. Like, she's not playing games like Jaron might be. She's stable. And so anyway, it ends really well. And it does end, spoiler alert, if you don't want to hear this, but it does end with them getting married, which I freaking loved. Thank you, Jennifer Nielsen, for giving me that closure. I needed it. So, all in all, the entire series, let me try to pick them up. There's a lot of them. Okay. The entire series is fantastic. It's 5 books. Technically, whoops. Technically, these are like youth fiction or whatever. I mean, it was in the YA section in my library, which is usually where I hang out. Um, and honestly, I think that's where it belongs, despite it being like youth fiction or whatever, because it can be quite violent. Jaron, he gets beat up a lot, for sure. Like, warnings for violence, I guess, because it's war. There's war, so there's violence there. But also, Jaron frequently gets captured by his enemies and or whipped or beat up. So, like, just heads up for that if you don't want to watch that or read that. We're watching it. But overall, I think it's a great book series of a young man who overcomes, but also his circumstances, but also he learns that he cannot handle everything on his own. He has to rely on his friends. He can't, um, just he tries to handle everything and he can't. And, as a person who is a person, I can relate to that because I'm very much the type of person that thinks I need to handle everything on my own. And if I don't, then I'm a failure. But that's not true, my friends. It's really not true. My cats are like trashing my room at the same time. So, anyway, there we go. Now that's the right way. Um, it's a great book series. I love the colors, by the way. I always like staring at these books. They always draw my eye because I love like the jewel tones of them all. Ooh, it's so pretty. Um, Great book series. I think anybody could enjoy these if you don't mind violence, because like I said, that's pretty much the only thing in it that really is notable. Otherwise, it's just adventure, exciting, and enjoyable. And Jaron's one of my favorite lead characters. So that's my current one of my current favorite book series is, and of course, The Thief. This is my favorite book personally. Um, Smells good. Smells like an old book because it's just been on my shelf for forever. But yeah, so I guess that's all I'll talk about for now. I'll go like book series by book series or whatever. I won't do like multiple book series because that would be like kind of unhinged, if you know what I mean. Um, I will, I guess, mention my book. Sorry, she's up here. Um, so I am an author. I got published last year. I am an amateur author, I will say. I do the best I can. I like writing and I just felt like it was time to share it. So if you feel so compelled, it is on Amazon. It is The Project, by Jillian Hope. That's my name. And it's a pretty good book. It's a sci-fi fantasy fiction. Mostly, this book focuses on the sci-fi aspects of the world. So Vance Wolf is our main character. He's the guy here. Vance, he is a young man from a small backwater village that kind of they believe in what they call the old ways, which means no modern amenities, kind of like Amish. You know what I mean? Like no modern amenities, no technology whatsoever, but there is this city called Zatch City, and Zatch City is the most modern, okay? They are technologically advanced. They have been fighting against a threat of great evil that is kind of lives up north in like the snowy regions, okay? There's some villains living up there, or so they think, right? Some monsters. And so they have been preparing with technology to fight this great evil. But part of what they do is human experimentation in this city. So when that time comes around, they go and they kind of go to the most backwater villages in all of Invaris, which is the name of the world, and they gather people that are either willing to be submitted to experimentation or their families are willing to give them up. Um, so in Vance's case, Vance was unfortunately one of those people that was given up by his parents because he was a minor and that's kind of how they did it. They're like, "Whoa, fine, we'll take him. It's like an adoption, but it's not," kind of thing. So anyway, needless to say, Vance gets taken to this giant city. It's a total culture shock for him. He has no idea what to think or do because he's never been around an environment like that. And they are training him and doing experimentation on him to essentially make him a super soldier in a special faction to fight the enemies of the human world. So that's kind of where I'll leave it. I won't get further into it than that because if you would like to read it, I would love for you to um, purchase it yourself if you would like. I don't want to give spoilers on my own book, but I am also writing. This is only the first book in a series. There will be more, and I don't want to give away more, but I will probably be talking about it as it goes along. And of course, if anybody has any questions, feel free to comment on that, and I'd love to talk more about that with you. It is through Amazon. So if you look up the Invaris Chronicles, Invaris Chronicles, you can find it, or you could look up the project with my name, Jillian Hope. You can find it that way. Um, there is like a ebook and paperback and hard cover option. It's totally up to you, and no pressure at all. But yeah, so that's what my book is about, and that's how I became an author. And it's very exciting. I'm very honored. I'm very blessed that this is something that's happened in my life, because obviously books mean a lot to me. So it's very cool that that happened. So anyway, needless to say, these are some great books. Please pick up a good book, enjoy it. Maybe next time I'll talk about a video game that I really like or something, change it up a little bit. Um, but yeah, so there you go. Enjoy. Thanks for coming with me on this ride to talk about some books, and hope to see you again soon. Bye!